All right, happy Friday. Welcome, my friends, to another episode of Extreme Health Radio. Super happy to be here with you. Actually, I'm super happy it's Friday because I love Fridays. So hope you're having a great Friday wherever you are in the world. Probably many of you listening are not in Friday right now, but hope you're having a great day wherever you are listening. And thanks for joining us. This is episode 645. So if you want to grab the show notes of anything that we talk about, just go to extremehealthradio.com/645. And we'll put all the links to everything that we talk about on that page. So 645 is today's show page. So I hope you had a great week, and this is going to be fun. So let me introduce my guest here in just a second. But first, let me share with you some of our upcoming shows. So if you're new to the show and new to what we're doing, we broadcast twice a week on Mondays and Fridays right now on 10:45 a.m. Pacific time. So you can join, you can subscribe, and if you're on YouTube, Instagram, you can just follow our work and make sure to be updated on all the shows. And I'm going to go here to our little homepage here. And so today we've got Dr. Glen Swartwout, and we'll talk about him, about a lot of his work over in Hawaii. So that's going to be cool. Monday we got Dr. Jacob Lieberman talking about light, color, and consciousness. So that'll be pretty fun. Next Friday, a week from today, we've got Callie Lyons. We'll be talking about fluorinated chemicals. And then on Monday, the 23rd, Dr. Michelle Lamassa Schrader. She did a workshop for our Extreme Health Academy, all about recall healing and the spiritual, emotional connection to disease. So that's going to be a good show too. And then next Friday, the 27th of December. Wow, we're doing a show 2 days after Christmas. Okay. Dr. Stephen Hewer, or not doctor, but Stephen Hewer, we'll be talking with him about One War Away, which is a really, really great product. So we'll be doing those shows here pretty soon. So if you haven't subscribed, lots of cool stuff happening and coming up on the radio show. So a lot of cool things happening. So I'm really, really blessed to be able to do this and to be able to get the word out to you guys about alternative and natural therapies out there. So today we have Dr. Glen Swartwout, and he gave the title Accelerated Self-Healing, and his website is tryunity.net. And let me just read a little bit of his bio so you can kind of get an idea of who he is. Reverend Dr. Glen discovered in the mid-1980s that he was at over 90% risk of dying before 1996 based on Bioelectronics of Vincent, BEV, known in European biological medicine as the medicine of the future because of its predictive power. BEV assesses biological age via blood, urine, and saliva parameters of pH protons, RH2 electrons, and resistivity ionization via photons. So he's doing a lot of cool work, and his website is tryunity.net. And I don't know where I heard about him because I listen to a lot of shows and podcasts and all kinds of cool stuff, and I often forget where I hear about people. But I heard a podcast with you, Doc, and it was so good that I had to invite you on to be on our show. So thanks for being on today.
Thank you. It's great being here.
Yeah. So you do quite a few podcasts with people around the world, right?
Yeah. Happy to. I love to talk when people are interested. There's plenty to be said about health and healing and just science and our understanding of who we are, where we are, why we're here. Those are questions that just really fascinate me, especially, as we get involved in healing and seeing how this body's a self-regulating system. It heals itself. The Band-Aid doesn't heal us. The aspirin doesn't heal us. And in fact, the aspirin can prevent healing. A Band-Aid might impair healing if it's keeping too much moisture in the wound. And
Right.
but so we can arrange conditions to support the body, to stimulate the body, to accelerate its healing process. And if it's healing faster than it's degenerating or being damaged or being inundated with toxins, then we kind of age in reverse. And was my experience, having been slated for expiration date before age 40 from basically mercury toxicity from dental work as a child.
Wow.
It was interesting over the years having patients come see me after not seeing me for a year or 2 years and say, "Hey, doc, you look younger than last time I saw you. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't look so young now, but I'm
No.
older. But
No,
I'm
that's
over 20 years past my expiration date and doing
yeah.
pretty good.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
It's interesting you mentioned the mercury because the late great Dr. Hal Huggins, I'm sure you're familiar with his work,
yeah, yeah,
who passed on recently, but he was saying about mercury, all you need to make sure, because he was talking about how mercury is like just ubiquitous in our society, it's everywhere,
yeah,
and not just in dental fillings, but he said we're never going to be able to get it all out, but as long as you can get more coming out, he was talking about sauna therapy. He said as long as you
yeah.
can get more coming out than what's coming in, then you're on the right path.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like it's less important to me when I get started with coaching a client, where they are. Okay, they've got disease conditions or symptoms, or maybe not. Maybe they want to improve and enhance their athletic performance or academic abilities. It's where you're headed that's important, not where you are starting.
Hmm.
That we've got time to
Yeah.
make improvements. If
That's
you're going the
interesting.
right direction, then longevity is a slow race. It's like being the tortoise is fine.
Yeah, yeah, that's so true. It's interesting too because I share a lot on the show just about people, and it's interesting because people get involved in natural health, as you know, for many different reasons. Sometimes
Yeah,
it's preventative, sometimes they're faced with an acute illness or something, and but ultimately, it seems like the obsession shouldn't really be about health. In as much as once health is restored, then like you mentioned earlier, why are we here? Like, what are we going to do with that energy or that extended life? Like, what's next? Because we took care of ourselves and now our body's operating. Then what do we do with that? Right? There's something much
yeah,
bigger
yeah,
going on.
yeah. The purpose of health is so we can engage in life.
Hmm.
And I've come up with a lot of systems to help communicate the fundamental concepts that I've learned in healing to patients, so they have a roadmap for healing. And one of the key ones is what I call the 5 phases of health, from 1 to 5. Five, and I oriented it kind of like people are used to in school, where you want a higher grade, right? So phase 5 is the top level of health, and that's where we may be dealing with hormonal issues, which is about biocommunication and regulation in response to our environment. Like, think of the adrenals react to stress and give us more energy. There's kind of drawing on our reserves and shutting down processes of nutrition and repair temporarily, although we live in a culture where it kind of can become a chronic state, and that's a problem. But the other side of it, of that internal regulation in response to our environment, is just life stresses, life issues. We're engaged in life in that top level of health, phase 5, where phase 1 would be inside the cell issues. The mitochondria aren't producing enough energy, and without energy, wake up in the morning, you don't have any energy, it's hard to get out of bed.
Hmm.
Same on a cellular level or organ level or system level.
So it sort of works out from phase 1 to phase 5, kind of how you describe it. And phase 1 would be almost like the microscopic level or the mitochondrial level, the biophysics and that kind of thing. And then it eventually works its way out to your outer tissues and then the outside world and how you engage with
Yep,
that. Is
yep,
that your
yep.
idea?
It's kind of concentric. It's all basically originally comes from biophysics. So there are different biophysical terrains in each of those levels or phases. Phase 1 is low energy terrain, where there's in the Bioelectronics of Vincent from Europe, they measure the photons, the electrons, and the protons, which are the basic fundamental subatomic units that make up the body on a material and energetic level. So and it's, you don't want to measure the arterial blood. That's too messy. It's going to spray everywhere, high pressure. But they measure the venous blood and have a special sensor that the first little bit of blood that comes out bypasses the sensor, because that's already exposed to air, and that'll change those parameters. It's very sensitively regulated in the body, and so then the untainted blood by exposure to air is measured, and they find in phase 1, which is low energy terrain, it's the conditions for cancer, the conditions for degenerative disease, the conditions for viral activity, where there's not enough energy for the cell to have a force field of structured water on the outside that prevents viruses from attaching to the cell membrane.
Hmm.
Uh, so they find a low level of both protons and electrons, which are the two main material energy forms, and of course low level of photons of light energy as well, which if we think about it, life energy is all really solar energy. We're even photosynthetic as organisms. We're finding out. I'm sure you've had shows on about the fourth phase of water, structured water, that is formed in the body through light energy, through primarily infrared and ultraviolet light. So it's phase two. We're in the healing process. So phase one, we're restoring that energy function in the cell, getting the mitochondria working, which is where 95% of our 17/18ths of all of our energy, photonic light energy that's released from food when we break chemical bonds, which is the other pathway of energizing the body besides light directly. When we get that working, then we can start repairing the cell. In other words, regenerating the enzyme systems of the cell. Enzymes are little amplifiers. They amplify chemical reactions that would take a long time to happen, but in life we can facilitate those reactions that we want to happen by having the enzymes. And enzymes have coenzymes, and we call them vitamins and minerals, that are the little lasers that provide specific frequencies or quantum energies of light to make those reactions happen. So those are our key critical factors in phase two, which is rejuvenation, which means restoring the function of the cell. So those are all intracellular, and phase three and four have to do with the outside of the cell, the milieu, the terrain, the matrix, the connective tissue, which is the home of every cell. Phase three is where we can actually get enough energy in the cell to make two functioning cells out of one. And in phase four, we're cleansing that external home of the cell, cleaning the house. If your body you think of as the living cell, well, you live in a house, and if your house is filled with stacks of newspaper, then you can't breathe.
Right. That's interesting. Okay, so phase four is more cleaning up what they call the milieu or the environment, maybe the blood serum or whatever you want to call. Does that also mean altering the pH of that environment too, or how does that work?
So the pH is involved in all of those steps. In phase one and phase two, the venous blood would be excessively alkaline. And what that means is there's not enough acidity coming from the mitochondria, which produce carbonic acid, carbon dioxide as a result of oxidative metabolism. And then phase three and four, there's excessive amounts of acid, toxins in the blood trying to get out, trying to cleanse the tissues. But at least it's moving, but hard to move. Hypertension could be acidic blood that makes the blood thicker and hard to pass through the kidneys, which are the high pressure filter. In Western medicine, there's a tendency to, we'll give a toxin that slows down the heart so the pressure's not so high. Well, yeah, okay, that might prevent you from blowing a gasket, but it doesn't help clean the blood at all, and it doesn't help the heart. In fact, there was a study in England. There's these rare studies that ask the big questions of, well, is the person healthier? Because the doctors, the medical system, in our small view of modern science, we tend to look at this one little picture and control all the other variables, even though they're more important than the thing that we're measuring. And all the doctors in the study agreed that the patients are healthier and better off because the numbers are right on the blood pressure. But then they asked the patients themselves, and all the patients as a group agreed that, no, I don't feel as well. I'd have less energy. I'm not as functional. And they went as far as to ask the family members and people in the community and, the pastors and people who interacted with the patient, and the whole community and family and the patient, they all agreed with each other that, gee, this person doesn't seem as well. So what's the purpose of medicine, if not helping us to function better? Quality of life is number one. And the beauty is when we support a higher quality of life with healing, then we find that people who are healthier actually live longer. So there isn't a trade-off there of, oh, I don't want to live longer. Some people will say, when they're not into healing, oh, I don't want to live longer. They just imagine it being more years of suffering. But the
Right.
statistics, the epidemiology shows, no, if we're healthier, we live longer, and we have fewer years of suffering, less, we're less dependent on other people to take care of us.
Right. It's interesting because
it's win-win.
Yeah, it's interesting. I find interesting that quote in the Bible in Genesis where God curses mankind, and there's this whole story. But what I find interesting is like whether or not that's actually true or it happened that way is debatable. But the words are interesting because he says that he cursed man's longevity or his lifespan down to 120 years old. And so prior to that, there was cases, at least in the Bible, whether or not it's true is a different story, but in the Bible, guys living to 900 years old, Methuselah, things like that. And if the curse was 120, like we're 40 years shy of that. So something's going wrong somewhere, right? If that's true.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by, everything out to the cosmology, and there's definitely some alternative points of view that to me make a whole lot more sense, that actually makes sense out of some of that, oral history and written history that's comes down to us. The electric universe hypothesis, you can look it up, and if you're at all get interested in understanding, again, the universe that we live in, it's much more explanatory for a lot of things that modern cosmologists get always shocked and surprised. Oh, we found, all these objects out in space that can't exist, but they do. And, that their view is that actually we don't live in sort of a steady state solar system. The conventional view is, okay, it's kind of like a clock, and we can look at how we can turn it backwards in time and see how it was, 2 billion years ago. But that doesn't make sense. When they look at the different planets and moons, they call it like a fruit salad. They're all different. They're all created in different ways, probably come from different places. So there, and if we look at the geological history of the Earth, we see radical changes, periodic changes where everything is just, the whole environment suddenly changes, and that's when there's new species that appear. They call it a punctuated equilibrium in geology. Mm-hmm. So that it appears that there was a punctuation in the equilibrium of our solar system within human history, within human memory, not in the written history. It's before that, but the end of the last ice age, the Younger Dryas, the 12,000, 13,000 years ago. There were major changes when all the large animals, many of the large species went extinct, and many people think that there actually was a high level of human technological culture in previous times, but there was such radical geological earth changes that much of that record has been erased. So it's putting that all together, it looks like even the sun that we have at the center of our solar system wasn't the sun that was described by ancient peoples, and not just by one culture. We're talking about around the planet. Mm-hmm. If you look at rock art around the planet, the same shapes are drawn by people on every island and continent at the same period of time. How could that be? We think they weren't in communication with each other, and I don't think so either. But yet they're drawing the same thing. Well, it had to be something that they saw in the sky. And There's a plasma physicist, a leading plasma physicist, when he saw those shapes that came from the rock art, he was upset because he thought he had a leak of information from his top secret laboratory in New Mexico, the government lab. He said, "Really? How'd you get these? These are classified information. These are plasmoids. These are the shape that plasma makes." Well, we live in a plasma universe. Mm-hmm. The plasma physicists, you look at the stars, that's plasma. And between the stars is plasma too. It's just in dark mode. There's not enough electricity to see it. And we can't see electricity until there's enough to make a magnetic field. And we can see magnetic fields in space. And yet the conventional view is, well, they're frozen in from the Big Bang. It's like, No, that doesn't even make sense. I mean, from high school physics, it doesn't make sense. What
Right.
there's iron or rare earth magnets out there in the middle of space? I don't think so.
Yeah.
It's plasma that's carrying electricity, and that electricity forms the magnetic fields that we see connecting all of the structures in space. If you look at the big picture of space, it looks like the brain. Actually, it looks
Hmm.
like a fungal mycelium, which, as human beings, as animal species, we're descended from the fungi.
Hmm.
We're you know portobellos or something. And consciousness in the environment. If you look at the soil, what is it that determines who's the gardener in the soil that determines which tree is going to grow and which one's going to die in mulch? It's the mycelial network in the soil that sends the nutrients to certain plants and not to others.
Hmm.
So we live in a living universe. We're part of it. We're cells in God's body
Hmm.
is the way to see it
Yeah.
on a
I
spiritual
like
level.
that.
It's a
Yeah.
literal thing.
I like that.
We
Cells in God's body. That's really, really good. I like the way you
That's an old
described that.
saying which I've
Yeah.
adopted when I came across. It's like, oh, that that works for me. It's like,
Yeah.
yes, that's how we should see ourselves, and how we should treat ourselves, as part of that divine becoming. We're becoming God.
Hmm.
Even the Bible says that we're made to become gods,
And yeah,
or part of.
it's
We
so
look at
interesting. Hey
the
Doc, I wanted to ask.
DNA.
Hey Doc, I wanted to ask you about mitochondria and energy because you kind of alluded to that multiple times, and it seems like if human beings were able to effectively generate that ATP energy in complex 5 of the mitochondria and able to actually make the energy that we need, it seems like we would have the energy to deal with the toxins. We'd have the energy to replicate cells in a way that's healthy. We'd have energy to deal with any immune system compromise. So, what are you finding in your research that really screws up the body's ability to create ATP in that mitochondria there?
Well, one of the key things you already mentioned, mercury. It's ubiquitous not only in our culture and our environment, it's also ubiquitous in the body. Mercury is the most symptomatic of all the heavy metal toxins. Heavy metals have an affinity to penetrate deeper and deeper into those layers of the structure of the body, from the whole body to the systems, the organs, to the tissue, to the cell, to the nucleus, and even get into the DNA. And the mitochondria has its own DNA, as we know from the maternal source.
Hmm.
Uh, so heavy metals are a big thing. Mercury is known as the great masquerader, just like syphilis was back in the day when that was the most common STD,
Uh-huh.
because it can produce any symptom at all. Any disease can be simulated or produced by that particular type of toxin. And mercury, of course, in that time was used as an anti-syphilitic drug. So there's a resonance, there's a similarity. They're attracted to the same locations and therefore interfere with the same pathways, which is everything.
Yeah, interesting.
So mercury is probably number one, but certainly we've created a lot more on top of that in the last 100 years with 70,000 plus synthetic toxic chemicals. Uh, Glyphosate is a big issue, and all the other pesticides. And also radiation, of course, is a factor. And interestingly, pesticides are considered radiomimetic, which means they have a similarity of interference of radiation.
Hmm.
Uh, so there's sort of these groups and classes of toxins and interferences, from the energetic, like radiation, to the material, like heavy metals. And in the healing process, we also want to address both of those pathways, recognizing now that light energy is directly nutritive. And in that age when we lived to 1,000 years, we were in a cosmic environment where there was a lot more infrared and red light that is directly nutritive and stimulatory to the mitochondria. There's specific wavelengths or frequencies of light that activate the cytochrome C oxidase in the mitochondria, and that's used in therapy, where we get, for example, up into the nasal cavity, into the sinuses, or through the cranial bones, to activate the mitochondria, activate also cellular energy, activate also detoxification. and we get improvements in function in chronic degenerative neurological conditions, which are becoming more and more prevalent as an issue in our culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's
So
an interesting question. This kind of goes right along with the question in the chat room about Big Fat Mama says, I wasn't going to do any questions until after the first break, but this was right in line with what you're saying about light. And she says here, how much time do you spend using infrared, UVA and UVB? Do you need it on all body parts and the head, or would arms and torso be okay? And is there too much infrared during the day? So that kind of goes right along with the light you're just talking about.
Yeah, when we do the intranasal for the brain, or transcranial for the brain in particular, because we're working on the nerves need some time to regenerate after you do that. So we only do that every other day for about 20 minutes, alternate days. The regeneration is going to happen on that day in between. Mm-hmm. For the body, that's, I think every other day is a good rhythm, good pattern, because we do have nerves elsewhere in the body. We might be working on, say, a diabetic with peripheral neuropathy. Mm-hmm. But if it's not so much of a neurological issue, I'm not sure if that pattern needs to be, my background is in eye and brain, and so I'm more focused on the head, but we work with whole people, and that's how we heal the eyes. The eyes don't get sick on their own, in a healthy body, and they don't get well without the whole body being healthy too. For example, the liver, our largest internal organ. In Oriental medicine, we know that the eyes are directly associated with the liver. The liver meridian has an internal channel that comes right up the optic nerve. So if we're dealing with something like glaucoma or macular degeneration, that's going to affect the cells that whose axons go and make up the optic nerve, that's a really critical aspect. There was actually an optometrist who was also a naturopath and medical doctor called Spittler, who started a field called syntonic optometry, which has resurged after being rediscovered, even though way back when it got suppressed because it was competing with drugs, and can't do that.
Shocker. Yeah, I can't do that.
Bad for the economy.
Yeah, I can't have that.
He found in his research that with frogs, that putting electrodes into different organs, that the best battery, if you make a frog battery, is to use one needle in the brain and one in the liver. They have electrically opposite charges, but the brain energy really comes from the eyes. It's photovoltaic. We call it nerve current, the nerve energy, actual physical current of energy that goes into the brain. And 2/3 of all the nerve current to the brain is carried by the two optic nerves. So we're photovoltaic, and we're also photosynthetic, as I was mentioning, with sunlight, the UV a little bit, but of course UV is ionizing, so we have to be much more careful about how we use that. And it doesn't penetrate nearly as deeply into the body. So UV we might use more for dealing with skin issues, where infrared can penetrate up to, say, about 7 inches in soft tissue, and it can be powerful enough to effectively get through even the thick cranial bones into the brain.
That's so fascinating. So because in my journey and learning more and more about health, and I'm learning more about how it's really all about mitochondrial health and creating ATP and energy. And if you can remove the things that obstruct that, then your body has the necessary energy to deal with anything. And so, and then light affects ATP and energy and the mitochondria like crazy. And so it's interesting because Dr. Mark Circus, who's been on our show a few times from Brazil, he talks about like cancer being a light deficiency. And we all focus on food, which is really important, but man, we're now understanding that light plays a huge, maybe even a bigger role than food, maybe.
Yeah, because it's a parallel pathway. You know how our body always has, it never has a single way to do something. Like, say, the autonomic nervous system has the sympathetic and the parasympathetic side, and they work as like in balance with each other. So now that we understand that we're photosynthetic, that we can use light directly as metabolic energy to run enzyme pathways, to do what ATP does. Well, that's direct to the cells and tissues. It doesn't require the mitochondria. So in an optimum cosmological setting, like before the fall, if that was a literal, as we think in electric universe theory, that there was literally a fall, a change in the cosmology where there's a total change in the light environment that we live in, and therefore a change in the longevity of our being. Yeah, we could live 1,000 years if we're not dependent on eating food. The lion could lie down with the lamb and not, wouldn't eat the lamb because it's being fed by the environment. So we can question everything that we were taught.
I love that. Yeah. So this is a really great show. You guys, this is episode 645 where we're with Dr. Glen Swartwout. His website is tryunity.net. We're going to take a little bit of a break. And just as he was saying that, it's interesting because we just posted on something on our Instagram, a short video talking about the indoctrination of school. And he was talking about how most everything we learn in school is wrong. And it's so fascinating because this opens up a can of worms from physics to history to the government and where money is created, and everything that we're taught in our entire life is programs, and it's wrong. And so this kind of opens up all of that. I hope you guys are enjoying the show. If you are, please tag a friend, maybe share this link with them and let them know that we're here. And if you guys have any questions after the break, what I'll do is turn on our Skype, and if you want to call us, everything should work. We did some testing before we went on. Everything should work. So our handle is Extreme Health Radio on Skype, and we're going to be right back right after this.
You're listening to Extreme Health Radio, and I hope you're enjoying this show. Please share it with your friends by tagging @Extreme Health Radio on Instagram. Stay tuned for new shows weekly.
Yeah, so every week we do 2 shows, and we try to do our best of putting them on Instagram and all that good stuff. So come and join us on there. Tag a friend. Let us know what you think of the shows, and we kind of share our journey, our little baby twins, and all that kind of good stuff on Instagram. So really happy to be on there. As long as they allow us to have a platform, I figure why not? Let's share our stuff and hopefully help some people. So one thing I wanted to share with you about is these blue blocking glasses. So we're talking about light and how light affects our mitochondria and ATP production. But also what's interesting is light is such a powerful tool in self-healing and self-regulating. And there's an offense and defensive side of light. There's therapeutic light you can get from the sun, which is the most effective form of light. But then also it's really important on the defensive side to sort of block frequencies of light that are going to be damaging to your hormone production and your mitochondria and your eyes and all kinds of cool stuff like that. And so we had Dr. Sam Byrne on the show, and he was talking about this specifically.
You've got the optical systems you're looking through, and then, as you say, the screen time. When people use their digital device at night in dim light, the pupils dilate more. And so more of that blue light is going to get in because of the dilated pupil. But they're not using blue blockers, and they're not, doing eye supplements or eating foods that protect their eyes. So this blue light, it's a chaotic, very fast wavelength. It's going to damage the tissue in our eyes, no question about it. It's really critical. The lens of our eye, our original hardware, has a pigment that blocks the damaging blue light. But those plastic lenses that they put in the eye do not have the pigment that blocks the damaging blue light. So when people get the cataract surgery, then they're more susceptible to getting macular degeneration because that blue light can damage the macula. So they need to wear blue blocking lenses and protect their eyes, because these plastic lenses leave you wide open to be vulnerable to get the damage from the blue light. We're not sleeping well. We're exposed to all this blue light. So take your pick. There's probably, with all the people you have on your show, you could probably put that together and say, well, these are contributing factors in why our eyes are letting us down.
Yeah.
It's all of the above and more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we had Dr. Sam Byrne do a really awesome eye workshop inside of our Extreme Health Academy some time ago, and that was really cool. And so these ones here that I'm wearing right now are from a company called Blue Blocks, and if you're interested, if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, if you're watching on Facebook, there's links on our YouTube channel for this underneath this particular video. And if you're listening on a podcast, it'll be available at extremehealthradio.com/645. And we'll put links to blue blocks. There's also raw optics, which I wear a lot, as well as the True Dark ones that are also all available in biocharge.me. But if you're on YouTube, there should be links down below for that. And then the other thing I wanted to share with you guys, which is really cool, was actually here are the glasses there. I'll bring that up on the show. But then also I wanted to share with you this jumping up and down on a rebounder, like how important that is for your health and for your lymphatic system. It's a practice that I do every single day, and I do it for about 15 minutes a day. I usually do it while standing in front of our Juve red light therapy device. So every night I talk to my parents on the phone, and whenever I do that, I sort of multitask and I jump up and down on a rebounder. During the winter. In the summer, I'm usually doing this outside. But listen to what Ty Bollinger has to say about rebounding in general.
What do you do to treat cancer? What do you do to prevent it? Rebounding is something that I try to do on a daily basis. A little mini trampoline for those people that aren't familiar with the term rebounding, but it's basically just jumping up and down on that little mini tramp. What that does is it stimulates the lymphatic system. Lymphatic system is one of our primary detoxification systems in our body, and most folks don't stimulate their lymph flow, and so the toxicity in their body builds up because their lymph is not stimulated, and the up-down motion on a rebounder stimulates the lymph flow better than just about any other exercise. So I do that almost on a daily, probably 5 days a week. I would say I average doing that.
Yeah, it's really one of the best exercises. I like to work out, and I like to surf, and I like to hike and be outdoors and do all these sort of, I don't know what you call those kinds of exercises, but rebounding has been something that I've done now for years, for probably 8 years now, and it's one of my most favorite exercises because of its ability to detoxify the lymph system. I have a little clip from Robert von Sarbacher. Check this out.
In general, probably one of the number one anti-aging exercises on the planet is rebounding. So 15 minutes a day is good for that. You can find people who have had, what are those, thermography scans on cancers, giant tumors, and when they're doing a rebounder, it would start spewing out and shrinking right in front of your eyes, the tumor would, as they're on the rebounder. So it's really good for that sort of thing. It's also very good for exercising internal organs. It's the only internal organ exerciser that I know of known to man.
You know what? I probably, now that I re-listen to that clip, I probably shouldn't play that because we can't make any claims, that it cures cancer or anything like that. We just can't do that, and it doesn't. What it does is it makes you healthier. So it's funny because we can't really say a whole lot these days when it comes to specific products because you get, people come after you for the word cure and stuff like that, and it doesn't cure anything. None of these products, all this is just health information, and so it's important for me to say that just to make sure that we can continue having this platform and be able to share what we share. But these are great little devices that you can get. You can fold up the legs, put it underneath your bed. It uses these flexi ropes instead of springs, so it's silent. We just switched out our ones the other day, and it was like after 7 years of using it. So they last. They're built to last. The Bellicon Rebounders are just, I would really recommend bringing these into your home and creating a healing sanctuary out of your house and bringing these tools in so that you can become healthier and just jump on it, a few times a day, or you can just jump on it for 30 minutes at a time or whatever you want. And it's one of the best exercises you could do for longevity and prevention of anything and keeping good balance, improving posture, improving circulation, improving lymphatic flow and detoxification. It's been studies showing its correlation with bone density and all kinds of cool stuff. So, and you could even take it a step further and do EWOT, which is exercise with oxygen therapy. So you can, there's a reason why these things are in alternative cancer clinics, right? Rebounding has been used for years for that. So I can't say it cures anything, but it's really a great tool for prevention. So if you guys are interested in these, you can look at the link in the bottom of the YouTube video or go to extremehealthradio.com/645, and we'll be right back.
This is Extreme Health Radio, where we're 100% listener supported. Make sure to join the Extreme Health Academy with thousands of other listeners and get real solutions for your health challenges.
Yeah, if you guys want to go deeper with your health and join us and make some friends, if you kind of feel alone, the Extreme Health Academy is for you. It's an awesome, awesome place. I'm in there every single day in the forums, sharing ideas and connecting with people. So it's a really cool place for you to get the tools, and most importantly, the education to help turn your health around, because we don't need inspiration or motivation. Those things are great, but they wear off. We need education, and so that's kind of what we try to do inside the Extreme Health Academy. So let me bring Dr. Swartwout back on the show. Yeah. So Doc, I'm really fascinated. Like we're just kind of talking before about this light piece, but it is so interesting, right? When it comes down to mitochondrial health, how important the mitochondria is in our health and creating ATP. And I just find it the first place to start.
It's definitely, a core starting point, because without energy, again, we can't make the bonds to build enzymes to amplify the work of the cell and get the work done. Therefore, we can't repair and rebuild a functional cell that can make two cells and regenerate the tissue. To have healthy cells that have enough energy with their energy force field of structured water on the outside that's going to push the toxins and waste out of the connective tissue between cells into the lymph channels that the rebounder is going to help to clear out, to have a healthy organ, and to reintegrate all the different systems of the body, so we're working as one unit rather than piecemeal. Our bodies are multitasking, especially in urban environments. So when we test people, I work with remote clients mostly, and so when we're testing them energetically, either through technical means over the internet or through the consciousness interface, which is non-local. We find people, in big cities, Los Angeles, I never saw anybody with less than 5 things that their body was working on at the same time. And you go to a place that's a little more relaxed, like, even San Diego, most people were like 2 or 3. Seemed to be although a lot of them had radiation issues because of there's some old radioactive sources and Navy, a lot of Navy activity there and whatnot. Right. So, each environment has its own stresses, and we each carry our own patterns of sensitivity that's generational. So we want to look at, parents and grandparents, the whole German new medicine approach. We use a system called EVOX, which is voice biofeedback, where we can pick up stress frequencies in the voice when you speak about your mother, your father, your grandparents, and detoxify those patterns of information of cell memory. Our genetics is not only the hardwired genes, it's also the information carried by those sender receiver antennas of information of bio communication. We know, like from Professor Fritz Popp's work in Europe, how coherent light signals can be carried between cells, thousands of cells apart. So one part of the body communicating with another part. When a cell dies, it gives off a flash of that coherent light information so that the rest of the body can respond appropriately and utilize that information and energy. There's so much more going on than what we learned in school, and it's the reason I put together what I call the clinical theory of everything. Just one dimension of is those 5 phases of the biophysical terrain. The first phase of which we're looking at getting the mitochondria working, and phase 2 we're helping to regenerate the mitochondria, among other things, repairing, rejuvenating the cell. Is to not forget any aspect, because like the mind and the spirit, we could focus in on the material and the and energetic and think that that's all there is, and forget that we are spiritual beings having we're having a human experience, having a biological in-body experience. Well, we know from placebo versus nocebo that's half of the effect of any medicine or any treatment. If you don't have a good feeling about your surgeon and the surgical process you're about to enter into, I'd say, wait, don't talk to other surgeons, talk to other healers about other possibilities. Because if we have a negative anticipation or expectation, we're instructing ourselves to respond to that negativity, to that negative outcome. We're actually telling them that's what's going to happen, and they're going to tend to produce that. So that for me is number one. Beyond even say zeroing on mitochondria as the thing to focus on. Like take vision as a metaphor for our experience of life. That we have central vision, and yes, that's where we see the detail, and that detail is critical of importance. But in order to even find which detail to focus on, we need awareness. We need our whole peripheral vision to be turned on and active. And there's a real difference between just being biologically intact and having presence in that field. If you think about how much of the room around you can you see when you think about it, you're looking straight ahead, but, oh yeah, I can see this over here and that over there. And wow, I can kind of fill the space with my awareness. And now I can even think of yourself, presenting to a room of people. You can project your presence out into that space, to not just see it in a sensory sense, but as we say in optometry and vision therapy, vision is motor. It's an active expression. When we see the stars, our consciousness is literally being projected to the stars. It's not just an inward motion. The Greeks understood this. Even when you study grade school children, 80-90% will say, oh yeah, vision is an outward ray that projected from us into the world. Conventional biology will say, oh, the sky is inside the skull. There's a representation of it there, but the experience is out there in space. It's our visual space world, and we project it. It's an image that we project. And we know from studies on remote vision, remote sensing, and remote healing, there's actual quantum effects at the point where we're visualizing, or whether we're seeing it directly or whether we're seeing it in our mind's eye. We are literally in the world. So our spirit is much bigger than the body itself.
It's so interesting, that you brought up that German new medicine, because we've done a few shows on that, and specifically in sort of the recall healing mode with Dr. Gilbert Renaud, I think, or Renaud. And it's interesting because I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people in our modern world, at least in the natural health field, they focus on, like you said, the materialistic. They focus on even as small as you can get, like the mitochondria. There's 3,000 to 10,000 per cell. So, I mean, these things are tiny, but they're still material. And so I like that you bring that up, because in recall healing, it's fascinating because they flip everything and they turn it around. And they say a heart attack is not your body dying, or it's not a disease. It's your body in the stages of healing. It's trying to heal. So the cancer tumor is a healing aspect of the body, but we have it all backwards. We think we died of the heart attack. And what Gilbert Renaud said is really cool. It's like, your body, when faced with trauma, the trauma is so much that the body does what it can to download that trauma from your brain into your body so that your brain can continue working and live life. And so it does that as a storage place for that trauma if you never deal with it. And life, like you said, is much deeper than the physical. Like, we need to go deeper, I think.
Yeah, and we'll see the flip side too. We'll have plenty of clients who are very spiritually oriented to the point where that's what they're trying to, the level on which they're trying to heal themselves, and not really taking in the physical needs of their body. So we can all be reminded to keep our awareness in its fullness, to expand into those areas where we're suppressed.
That's so true. So
a person who's avoiding an emotion like anger, which culturally we're trained to do. It's like, okay, I am not angry. Okay, if you say so. But maybe there's something going on in your liver that's stored there from, past experiences. And if we can open that up, well, that can improve so much, because anger is just energy. We're not trained how to use it in a constructive way, but it's a very, very powerful energy for change that's needed. It's the energy of organization and structure. So if that person is having trouble with being organized in their life, then cleaning out the closets is going to help them have space to reorganize their life.
A smart thing to do, yeah. So we're going to take some questions from the chat room, but before we do, I'm going to go over, while you're answering this question, and look on YouTube for any of the ones that are in all caps if anybody has questions for you. But while I'm doing that, I wanted to ask you, so you mentioned before that you see people remotely, people can connect up with you and work with you remotely. Is that kind of a lot of what you do?
85% of our clients, and it's a growing number. And I've been doing that since the 1980s when I learned how from other bioenergetic practitioners, in practitioner training. So my most fundamental way of doing that is I have drawers and drawers of energetic samples, mostly like homeopathic preparations of different organ tissues, toxins, nutrients, allergens, you name it. And so those are my energy references. And I use my body as the surrogate. So I'm thinking about the client. I have their photograph, I have their history, and tuning into them, using my body as the communication vessel at a distance and through the non-locality function of the spirit, which the spirit body is made of, as I understand it, as I model it, it's a condensate, similar to a Bose-Einstein condensate in physics. Bose and Einstein were physicists that proposed that state. In the 1990s, there was research that confirmed that at close to 0 degrees Kelvin, when you take all the thermal random energy out of the system, it becomes a field rather than a thing. It's now this field that acts as one atom, even though it's an extended object. So our spirit, when it's integrated and unified, or to the degree that it is, not subdivided into these different segments that are suppressed and separated, it's acting as a single object, a single quantum object, and it has quantum characteristics, which if you look at the list of how the quantum weirdness of quantum dynamics at that level of reality, which, where there is no material, it's just energy fields, but there's coherence, there's acting as a unity, and there's transdimensional connectivity where the quantum can go from here to there without going through the space in between, or it can be in both places at once. It can, well, that's how the spirit is. The saints appear to people who are thinking about them thousands of miles away when, at the same time in multiple places. Levitation in the Earth's gravitational field. There's gravity, but there's levity in the universe too. We have to tap into, again, there's always a dynamic opposition. There's entropy of things falling apart and breaking down, like aging. We think of, it's an entropic factor, but life itself is syntropy. It's a little life crystal. It's organized and structured in a coherent way. So we can tap into that syntropic principle and regenerate that life force.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so fascinating. So that's cool. People can contact you just on your website and work with you then. That's awesome.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, I'll bring that up in just a second. I've got a couple questions from the chat room. This is cool. So a lot of you guys are saying, I'm digging this guy. Darren, that's awesome. This is really cool. Okay, so let me kind of go through quite a few questions here. Let's start with this one. What is your opinion, Doc, on Stetzer? Dave Stetzer, and using aluminum foil. So Dave Stetzer, if you're not familiar with him, he's I forget what he's got a Stetzer Electrics, I think, and he talks a lot about voltage and things.
I've heard of Stetzer filters. I haven't worked with him. The first book I wrote back in the 1980s is called Electromagnetic Pollution Solutions.
Oh, cool.
And so, I should be up on all that, but there's so much, and the whole situation gotten so much worse.
Right.
Since then, we've filled the electromagnetic spectrum with everything possible that we can without thinking about asking the question, well, what's the effect of this on our Whoa,
Doc, are you there? Looks like we lost.
As usual, the narrow-minded little view of conventional science is, well, if it doesn't cook you, then it doesn't have any effect at all.
Right.
That's not true, because we're talking about the electromagnetic spectrum, so we're talking about quantum energy, and we're talking about resonance, which is, hey, if we want to identify chemistry in the lab, we look at the electromagnetic spectrum and what those specific resonances are. So every quantum energy has different resonances with different compounds and chemicals and atoms. So it's a completely wide open field that's, not being, we're just starting to ask the question of, Well, what would be, for example, I put out the hypothesis that if we could change our electrical system, the biggest frequency that we put out, I've been doing for a long time, is 50 hertz or 60 hertz, the power frequency of the power, the mains, depending on what country we're in. Europe, it's 50 hertz. Here, it's 60 hertz. Well, if you measure frequency in the ionosphere, whatever, 60 miles above us, you can measure that. Why? Because we're creating a grid. We're creating this electrode on the surface of the planet, and we're oscillating it at 60 hertz. And it's the capacitor. It's you have the ionosphere, which is conductive. You have the groundwater that's conductive, and we're making that oscillate at a certain frequency. Is that a healthful frequency? No, it was chosen because it's a convenient number. 50, okay, it's half of 100. 60, okay, it's like 60 seconds, 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes an hour, so we'll do it by 60.
Right.
It was just a mental construct. When looking, and we know from modern alchemists that those frequencies make it impossible to do alchemy on an electric stove, because there's stress frequencies for the spirit minerals that make up our conscious body, that's our immortal body that we're here to build. So they're driving the spirit away. Great. Right? Driving it out of the food, well, driving it out of our body by living in these fields. So I was looking for a frequency that would do the opposite, because then there's always balance in nature. There's a frequency that's stressed. Okay, so there's a harmonic frequency that creates a sanctuary effect. And so I was one day, almost the whole day, spent at my right frequency generator, just tuning to the next frequency, every 1/10 of a hertz until I got to about 20 hertz. I'll never get to higher, through all the right frequency ranges to 1,000 hertz if I do at a 1/10 of a hertz. So I started going to every 1 hertz. And I was then, in contemplation of the universe, like just going through this mechanical process, change it one, feel it, no, nothing there, change it, another one, nothing there. And all of a sudden I'm brought back into real time in my body. It's like, whoa, my muscle got strong on that. What is that? 172 hertz. Okay. Whoa, I was like shaking, and let me come back to it. Let me clear my mind and come back with a skeptical attitude and say, okay, it's probably nothing, but let's just see if I can feel something again. And I did that a few times, like, yeah, I do. I feel something. So I thought maybe somebody else found this. So going online, it's like not finding any, there's no research money from government or corporations to find beneficial frequencies, right? So there's not much research on it. And then I come across a frequency listing that has all the right frequencies and all these other frequencies compiled, and they say 172 hertz was known as the dominant harmonic frequency of nature in ancient China and Tibet. It's like, oh, more goosebumps. Like, wow, that's like better than I could have hoped for as any kind of confirmation that, somebody's observed something. Not only they observed it, they used it as their metric standard for 1,000 years, that they also called 1,000 years of peace. They made copies of the original 172 hertz bowl and sent one out to each province every spring. So all the music was tuned to it, and whatever else they could tune to it, that was the standard. It was the one thing in the Forbidden City where the emperor lives that was more valuable than the emperor himself or herself. That the emperor dies and is replaced generationally. That's a given. But this bowl, it's from the golden age, from that time before some great change left over, and so they're copying that. And now there's archaeological evidence that that the music in ancient China was tuned to that 172 hertz frequency. The people doing the archaeology don't realize it, but you can see it in the data.
Yeah, and just as well, archaeology, every field has been sort of infested with a modern paradigm that's sort of like the medical industry. That sort of pervasive paradigm sort of dominates every field. So inside every field, you have to go deeper and deeper and deeper. But Doc, I wanted to ask you this question about the Stetzer, and what he was saying was it's all about discharging voltage and discharging electrons. And so he was saying, as an electrician, what he does is prior to going to bed, he stands on tin foil for 30 seconds on the bottom of his bare feet to discharge those electrons that we sort of, like static electricity, we build it up all day long, and before you go to bed, you can actually discharge. Have you heard of that, and do you think there's anything to it?
I haven't. I've heard of him. I've heard of his Stetzer filters. I'm sure, or he developed or named after him.
Mhm.
Uh, if he's grounding that foil, then that would work. I wouldn't use aluminum foil just because we're going to absorb that through the skin. If the skin is acidic, if we're toxic, the skin is supposed to be acidic, but especially if if we're more acidic, more toxic, that's like you shouldn't put aluminum foil over spaghetti and put it in the fridge because you'll see little holes in it, and that means the aluminum has been dissolved by the acid.
Right.
But yes, it would have to work. I think it would have to be grounded electrically, somehow out to a copper pin in the ground.
Interesting.
If you have access to the earth, you can go walk on some organically grown lawn
Uh-huh.
and contact the earth that way. Walk on the beach barefoot in the moist sand. A simple way that pretty much everybody can do is when you're taking your shower or bath. Let's say you're taking a shower, plug the drain, put a little bit of Epsom salts or sea salt in the water, take your shower, and you're electrically grounding yourself. And yes, grounding. Vincent, who developed the BEV system that saved my life, he developed a system called Negativeur. It was an electrode grounded to the water pipe, like your faucet, and then run the water. And he had you put a diode in there so it can't go the wrong way if lightning hits or something, just a protection. And that's a healing process. It takes us that 20 to 40 minutes to recharge the electrons in the body by grounding ourselves to the earth. The earth is negatively charged. If we think of the universe as a fractal mathematical system, the sun is positively charged like the nucleus of an atom, and the earth is like an electron orbiting around that central proton.
Mm-hmm.
So
Cool.
yeah, antioxidants are by definition electron donors. So I call the earth our largest antioxidant because it's the biggest source of electrons and the most dominant source. Every other animal, biological body living on the earth grounds itself regularly to the earth. We, drive around in cars with rubber tires. We walk around in our Nikes, and
Right.
I say just remove it. Just get back to the earth.
I hear you. Okay, cool. So let's kind of do a little rapid fire because we got a lot of cool questions. This one is from Big Fat Mama on YouTube. Does he use any rocks like quartz, shungite, tourmaline, etc. for healing or cleaning water, charging or grounding, or EMF protection? That's a good question.
That's a great question, and yes, you just named my favorites.
Nice.
Yeah, shungite. I've just have a water bottle, a filter system that's designed to produce molecular hydrogen that turns out to be the perfect antioxidant because you can't overdo it because it doesn't interfere with oxidation in the mitochondria, which is how we get our energy. And I've just added shungite to the new filters of those. Shungite's amazing. And tourmaline, black tourmaline is a fabulous mineral for absorbing negative energies. So yes, definitely. Quartz, my favorite would be a real smoky quartz, not a fake smoky quartz. It's made with heat in an oven. And so if you get a real smoky quartz, it's made slowly in the earth by absorbing radioactivity. So it's developed a resonance for radioactivity. So you can use that as a cleansing wand over the body after exposure to radioactivity, like an airline flight if you're sensitive, or X-rays. And some people even notice that it'll turn darker when you do that, and then you can clear it with red light, shining red light, and
cool.
Hey, it got clearer again. Very fun.
I like that. Cool. Okay, another question here from Teresa. Now, I've heard a lot about this as well. She says, is, in quotes, HIV really what they're claiming it to be? Any insights if you have? Thank you. Good question, right?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, viruses, like I was mentioning earlier, they're non-motile. They have no means of movement, of self-regulated movement. It's just a little crystal, toxic crystal of DNA or RNA, and it can only approach a cell that has no energy, that is in phase 1 low energy terrain. So it's just a symptom. Like same with bacteria, fungi, parasites are these other biological systems that if we give them the right petri dish, we can grow them. Like in the lab, in the medical lab, if you want to do a culture and sensitivity test for bacteria, you've got to give it a bacterial growth medium. If you want to test a virus, you've got to give it attenuated cells, low energy cells to grow it on. Otherwise, it won't grow in a bacterial medium. It won't grow in a fungal tissue medium.
Mm-hmm.
Fungus grows on dead matter. So if our body's lymph isn't getting to clean out the junk, the waste, the broken down proteins and cells, then we're going to give a growth medium to support fungal growth. So the old debate between Pasteur and Béchamp, it said that that Pasteur admitted on his deathbed that Béchamp was right. Now, Pasteur won the argument. He was a better, presenter, promoter. And so we have a medical system that believes that, oh my God, this bacteria is trying to kill me. But hey, wait just a second now. In the natural history of cancer, there's over 200 different bacteria that have been identified as being associated with spontaneous remission of cancer. Well, spontaneous, yeah. Let's just negate it completely and say it's spontaneous. There's no spontaneous generation, but cancer disappears in 3 days spontaneously with a fever and a bacterial infection. But let's keep using antibiotics and kill bacteria because they're bad. Bacteria bad. It's a crazy world when you really start to see how limited our thinking is. Like Einstein said, we're not going to solve the problems we've created with the same level of thinking that got us here.
I like that. So this is a really good question, and this is something I've never thought about, and I love really sort of deep introspective questions like this. And this is from YouTube, talking about the heart. And she says, what are your thoughts on the theory or the purpose of the heart is a super electromagnetic generator? And so the question is, what would be the purpose of this huge energy expenditure? Would it be for a personal field or a personal force field? Why do we do that if we produce that much energy from our heart?
Personal, spiritual, and interpersonal, and transdimensional, transtemporal. Look at the studies on slides and the body's reaction to showing slides, some of which are just nature slides, beautiful, no big reaction. Some are like a snake or a fire or an injured body. And the body has a reaction that happens before the slide is presented. In fact, they've gotten it down, the time down to where the body reaction happens before the computer selects the random number in the random number generator to determine which slide is going to be projected. So, and that response doesn't come from the brain, it comes from the heart. It goes from the heart to the brain. There's more signals, more nerve pathways from the heart to the brain than from the brain to the heart. So, and in Oriental medicine, we say that the Shen, the spirit, lives in the heart. It's seen in the eyes. You can see, oh, hey, there's a live person. When you meet people, it's like, oh, wow, this person's like, I feel like I know them from beyond, I know I've never met them before, but yet there's some resonance there. There's some communication. There's some, empathy, sympathy, commonality. There's another self. So the heart has a function of communicating from the future, from our future self, which I say our future self. Think of a picture outside of the universe, outside of space and time, who you are becoming. We're transcendent beings. We exist outside of space and time. Who we're becoming is the fullness of who we are, who I was in the past, and what I know of myself through the ego, through that past knowledge, is limited. But my future self is unlimited. But the ego is in charge, has the ability to say no, to close the gates, to close down the windows and doors to that knowledge that's beyond what's known. So if I'm afraid of the unknown, if the ego is afraid of dying to itself, of changing, then I won't be open to intuition and to premonition and to that advanced knowledge, which again the studies are showing is a real function. That causality is not just the time is not just an arrow, a one-way arrow. It's a loop. Again, like everything else, there's the flip side. The flip side of the challenges we face in life is the spiritual growth that we get from facing them. If we run away from them, if we suppress them, if we just cut them out, I don't think we get growth from that. Not the same. But if we face, whether we overcome it or not, is not the issue. It's the spiritual growth in the challenge, in facing the challenge.
So good.
And the heart is the core. Core means heart. Heart is the core. It's the core of the 7 chakras. It's the source of the energy for that. The energy field of the heart can be measured 20, 30 feet away from the body.
Mm-hmm. This one comes from Bill. This will be our last question on Facebook. And I think it was going back to our talk about light. And he says, how about infrared sauna? Would that work for healing as well?
Absolutely. We love the infrared sauna. Now you can get full spectrum infrared saunas that have the near and the far infrared. So if you can do that, that's optimal. They have, again, every frequency has specific resonance. If you've ever seen the photograph, the movie of a bridge, I think in Washington State, that they happen to build at a resonant frequency to the wind in the valley that it's crossing, and eventually it collapses because it's just oscillating. So, or if you take a guitar and you pluck a G string and you have another guitar across the room, you dampen the first one, you can hear the second one resonating. So there's resonance, and that's what everything is made out of. Substances that have a specific fingerprint in the electromagnetic spectrum, and those resonances then can communicate. So our DNA is a major resonator. We restructure our DNA all the time in response to the environment, changing which genes are active, and also changing the morphology, the shape of the three-dimensional shape of that DNA as a biocommunication device, sender or receiver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so fascinating. A lot of really good questions. And Doc, I could talk with you for hours on hours because this is so good. I'm trying to manage the questions that I want to ask you along with the questions coming in. But tell people more about you and what they can see on your website. I'm going to bring your website up just in case people want to work with you or contact you or dive into your work a bit.
Yeah, there's an application on there if people are interested in working with us, where we collect some basic information, including their photographs, so I can visualize you and your history. There's optional questions. There's required questions. It's under wellness application, and we've got a YouTube channel with over 200 different videos, 12 books. My background is in vision and naturopathy. And so I work with the whole person, body, mind, spirit. We work with many people with blinding eye diseases. We don't limit to that. So if you find, again, there's resonance that, we can talk and we can find solutions. We work with people who have very limited budgets, other people who don't. So we offer sliding scale on our services. So we're going to do whatever we can to make it possible for you to improve your health and wellness and function, and our quote over the door is from St. Thomas Aquinas hundreds and hundreds of years ago, saying that the purpose of nutrition is to support the senses so that the spirit is freed to choose. In other words, we're spiritual beings navigating in this biological life, having an in-body experience through our sensory experience that leads to our cognitive capacity, that leads to our ability to respond and interact with the world and with each other. And that's the purpose of healing, is the spirit. When we forget that and we just, put people on morphine because pain is the enemy, I think we lose part of the battle that we should be winning. Just a patient who brought her father, who was dying of cancer, from Boston to the Big Island, put him on juice fasting and rebounding, whatever he could do. He was already on morphine when he arrived. He left his cigarettes and alcohol at home, and he was a heavy user.
Oh, wow.
He was in pain with the morphine. He was supposed to be dead in 6 weeks, according to the doctors. She kept him going for 6 months with our support as well.
Wow.
And the day that he died, he was off morphine in 6 weeks and pain-free. And so quality of life, I think that's really what we all want. And the day that he died, he was prescient enough to know that was the day. And he asked his daughter and son-in-law, please stay with me, don't go to work today. At noon, he passed, totally conscious. What's the difference in, transition to our next life when we're born from this womb of heaven, the earth, into our eternal life, being conscious and present versus being suppressed? we don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah,
We're all
yeah.
interested in the answer.
That's so cool. Well, Doc, thanks so much for your work and for your time. And if people want to learn more about you, the website is tryunity.net. And you have all kinds of cool stuff from working with you personally, it looks like, supplements in a different line. And I think before the show, you mentioned that you're working on developing your own line of supplements as well. So you got a lot of cool things and resources, and as well as books and information for people, right?
Yeah, and always more in the pipeline.
Yeah, always more,
So,
right?
Yeah, we love, I took a vow of poverty over 20 years ago and ran out of funds here in Hawaii, and no regrets at all. It's an interesting experience being outside the matrix, the commercial system, and I, putting my fingers into it to make these things happen, but I don't take any pay, and that's how we're able to offer sliding scale, cool. Yeah, for me, the pay is to see people get well. We say in the spiritual world, the full payment for every gift is gratitude, and all there is gifts.
That's so cool.
There's no exchange. You don't exchange money for a product. There's a gift of that token of money of exchange and there's a gift of the product that you've created to help that person.
I love that, Doc. Well, thanks so much. What a cool mindset you have about that. It's really, really nice. Well, thank you again for being on the show and sharing all that you're learning. It's so cool, and I really appreciate your work being out there in the world and giving people hope when a lot of people don't realize there is hope. So I appreciate your work, and thanks for being on today.
Thank you for all you're doing to educate people. The truth sets us free.
I love it.
May people perish for lack of knowledge. So true.
So
timeless
true.
Truth.
Yep. All right. Thanks, Doc. I will be in contact
Aloha.
on email, and I'll send you the link when it's done.
Super.
Awesome.
Aloha.
Thanks. Okay. Thanks, Doc.
You all.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Well, there you go, guys. So that was Dr. Glen Swartwout. What do you think about that? So I've got some things I'd like to share with you about that, and I'm curious about your questions in the chat room. So I think what we're going to do is I can hang out for a couple minutes. We'll do a little break. I'll come back and hang out with you guys in the YouTube chat room if you guys want to just kind of digest that show a little bit. That way we can kind of share some ideas that might work for you. And if you have any questions for me personally, we can kind of hang out a little bit and chat for 5 or 10 minutes after this break. So I think what I'll do is do a little break right now, and this is going to be about digestion. So check this out.
We hope you're enjoying this episode. Thanks for being on this health journey with us, and don't forget to check out biochargeme.com for hundreds of health products to build a better you.
So similar to what Dr. Glen was saying, this is how we support the show, and it is through your support when you go and visit biocharge.me and all of our products there. And when you click over and make a purchase, we get a little commission, and that helps support what we do. It helps pay for the software and the hardware and the microphones and the internet connections and all that kind of cool stuff. And it helps us to allow us to be able to purchase baby food for our babies and, pay our rent and all that kind of good stuff. So we appreciate your help a lot when you visit biocharge.me. So anytime you're in the market for good health products that have been vetted by us, head on over to biocharge.me and check those out. And that way it'll support our work as well. Here's a good product that I use and love, and I think it should be something that everybody takes every single day for their digestion. Digestion is the name of the game, and it's an aloe vera gel. So check out what Dr. Donnie Wilson said about that.
And then I encourage, we can talk more about this. What do I do to help people speed up the healing of leaky gut?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you mentioned aloe before,
Mm-hmm.
and that is one of the herbs that I definitely recommend, using for helping to heal leaky gut. You want to use herbs that are anti-inflammatory and soothing and healing to the intestinal lining. So aloe is a great one.
Mm-hmm. Aloe vera is, I think it should be part of everyone's protocol. And if you guys have visited your health food store, you probably have heard about aloe vera, and you get it every now and then to improve your digestion. But there's so much more going on with aloe vera. It has over 75 active compounds, so it's got vitamins, minerals, enzymes, amino acids, something weird called ormus, which we should have talked a little bit about on today's show, but it's a unique long-chain sugar, so the sugar is actually bitter, and these are called polysaccharides. And it also has something called ace-mannan, which it helps to induce macrophages to produce interferon, and interferon is it's said to be the antithesis or the opposite of tumor necrosis factor A. So I'm not going to say it heals anything or cures anything, but I'm telling you, there's a lot more going on with aloe vera than you might know just for your digestion. It's really a tremendous product. And the cool thing about this one is that it's hand harvested, it's raw, it's unfiltered, unprocessed, it's unheated, it's got no preservatives. They flash freeze it and then they ship it to you, and they only do that on certain days. So there's a whole protocol with getting it because they want to make sure that it's in good condition when it arrives at your house. And you can do like the health maintenance protocol, which is like 8 ounces a day, or you could do less as more of a maintenance to stretch it out. This stuff is just, I'm telling you guys, like, try this aloe vera out. It's called Stockton Aloe 1. Now, Rodney Stockton, who started this company, he lived till he was 96, and he accredited his long life to aloe vera. Of course, he's going to say that, right, because he's the owner of the company. But he lived to 96, and he took his own product. I don't know what you can make of that, but it is like a tonic, something that you should take every day. It's just an awesome product. And I highly recommend checking that out. Stockton Aloe 1. If you're watching on YouTube, there should be a link down below in the description. And if you're listening on a podcast, it'll be available at extremehealthradio.com/645. And here's something really cool that I wanted to share with you about colostrum, and this is another gut healer, and check out what Daniel Vitalis has to say about that.
So colostrum is the first food that all baby mammals receive, or all natural baby mammals receive. So when we were born, our mother's breasts were initially filled with colostrum before actually there was any milk available to us. And in an ideal circumstance, that's the first thing we drink. Well, the same is true for all mammals, and it's especially true for cows. One of the interesting things about bovine colostrum, cow colostrum, is it has a really unique impact on human health. This has been studied for a really long time. There are literally thousands of studies in the scientific literature showing the effects of bovine colostrum on human health, on human immunity, on restoring the gut lumen, the gut tract, repairing damage to the gut, and helping to restore health after things like IBS or Crohn's or diverticulitis or any of the sort of inflammatory bowel diseases. And it does this through a number of actions, but primarily through the fact that it contains all of the known mammalian growth factors. And these proteins that we call growth factors initiate growth in tissue throughout the body. And each type of tissue in our body has a specific growth factor. Well, they're all found in colostrum.
Yeah, colostrum is another one of those tonics that you can be on forever. And we just ordered ours through the Black Friday thing from Sir Thrival, our buddy Daniel Vitalis in that clip. But they were backlogged. They were slammed with orders. And many of you purchased your colostrum through our link, which I really appreciate. And thank you for that. That helps to support the show. But ours is coming today, so I'm super excited. We've been out of it for like a week or two, and I hate being out of it because you can add it to smoothies. We add it to our kids' food. It tastes really nice and creamy. It's just the best. Like there's something about it. If I'm missing colostrum, it's just like the food doesn't taste as good. You can make pancakes with it. It's amazing. We had someone in our academy asking about some ideas for gut health. And the 3 biggest things I share with gut health is just like immediate help is colostrum, aloe vera, and bone broth, along with L-glutamine for your gut. If you do those 4 things, your gut health is going to improve tremendously. And so colostrum is I'm just a big fan of it, and we use it every single day. Haven't been for the past few weeks because we ran out and we're waiting for the Black Friday thing to happen. But a great product, and I really encourage you guys to check out the Sir Thrival colostrum on biocharge.me under digestion, or you can search Sir Thrival on there as well. And so check that out, biocharge.me. If you're watching on YouTube, there should be a link down in the description, or it'll be available eventually at extremehealthradio.com/645, and we'll be right back.
Extreme Health Radio is your #1 resource for cutting-edge biohacks, news, and information about how to upgrade every area of your health. Subscribe to our newsletter so you don't miss a thing.
Yeah, if you can, subscribe to our newsletter. This way you never miss out on the shows that we're doing on a regular basis. And I honestly just don't know how long we're going to be able to be on YouTube. We're looking at this. I don't know if you guys have heard about it. This is called the COPPA, Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, I think it's called. And apparently the FTC sued YouTube, I think it was, for $170 million. And so what's going on with that is that there's something to do. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but it's something to do with online child protection privacy. I honestly think it's, I don't know. There's something deeper here. I haven't been able to really look into it. But what's going on is the FTC sued YouTube and won a lawsuit for $172 million. And now YouTube is going against or trying to make all YouTube creators comply with this COPPA law. And if they determine that your video is not designed for children, but it violates their kind of weird guidelines of what those very general guidelines, then you could be subject to $42,000 per video as a YouTube creator, as a content creator on YouTube. So it's just like, oh my God, it's so crazy. So I don't know if we're going to migrate platforms. I'd like to, and eventually I think we will. I think we're going to move to a program called Library, and that's kind of like a Bitcoin-based situation where it's, you're able to stream as well. So I think we're going to move in that direction. I don't know if we're going to move before we get kicked off or deplatformed, or if we're going to get deplatformed. So anyway, all of that saying, join our newsletter list, because that will be the last one to fall. If we get kicked off of Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and all the social sites, the last place to fall will be our newsletter list. So if you go to extremehealthradio.com, there'll be links all over the site for you to join our newsletter list. And that would be the best way. We send emails out on Mondays and Thursdays. And sometimes they're just upcoming events, upcoming things going on, our past shows, upcoming shows. If there's sales of any kind, we let you know about that as well. So we try to email twice a week on there, highlighting some of our best content. So make sure to do that. So I'm curious what you guys think about Dr. Glen Swartwout. Teresa says, thank you. Dr. Glen is great. What island is he on? He's on the Big Island. Teresa, thanks for asking. Yeah, the Big Island of Hawaii. I was there a few years ago. Raw Matt says, well, it has one specific element in Ormus. Make sure to take grapeseed extract or beet to get the other half. Okay, cool. Yeah, Tanya, you mentioned you cultivate your own aloe. That's the best way to do it, to cultivate your own aloe. That way you don't have to purchase it. A lot of our products like the Juve red light therapy and this Stockton Aloe 1, they're great because they're really designed for modern living. But ultimately, it's best to just grow your own and get out in the sun, because no red light therapy device is going to mimic the sun. It just won't. So it can't, because that would be like improving on what God made for us. Raw Matt says, Ormus is basically minerals, but extremely rare precious metals like rhodium and indium, for example. Yeah, we did a whole show on Ormus years ago, and I was really originally introduced to Ormus from David. Gosh, what was his name? Somebody named David years and years ago. And this quantum aspect of Ormus being like the precursor to a mineral, I think it was. And there's people out there growing and making Ormus and then infusing their gardens with Ormus water. People have said that Ormus like levitates and it goes through glass and all kinds of cool things like that. So Ormus is no, it wasn't David Wolf. It was David somebody else. This was the guy David Wolf learned from. I forget who it was, but anyway, Ormus is a really incredible substance that sort of dances between the physical and the spiritual. So it's like photons or light therapy or these deeper aspects of health. David Jubb. No, it wasn't David Jubb either. Oh gosh, I forget what his name. Maybe his first name wasn't David. David Jubb is a trip, isn't he? I've listened to so many David Jubb interviews and David Wolf interviews that would make your head spin. But yeah, Rob, Matt, I think I remember for you back in the day. I think you were friends with our good friend Anthony Anderson, weren't you? Yeah. So if you guys have any questions or anything about Dr. Swartwout, let me know. I'm curious. Big Fat Mama says here, joke, if we take enough vitamin K2 and magnesium and UVB vitamin D, do you think that we can uncalcify our pineal glands in our brains? Yeah, we did a show with Adam Bergstrom about that, and it was really interesting. He was talking about how we want to calcify our pineal glands. And as a typical Adam Bergstrom contrarian stance on everything, he talks about doing the opposite of what everyone else is talking about too. So, and we did a whole show with Dr. Kate Rayon Blue about vitamin K2 and its beneficial effects specifically for heart disease and things like that, and proper hormone function. And K2 is a big one. K2 is a really big one. Obviously, magnesium as well. Learning recent stuff from our friend and guest Morley Robbins about the dangers of taking vitamin D. Because apparently what vitamin D does, along with ascorbic acid and antibiotics and what else, high fructose corn syrup, is there's a specific sort of protein enzyme that carries, I think, copper, right? And it's called ceruloplasmin. And if you don't have enough copper, bioavailable copper, you can't regulate iron in the body, according to Morley. And iron causes rust and oxidation and disease. And he's tying it to just about every disease known to man. And so what regulates the excess amount of iron is copper. And apparently what vitamin D does is it calcifies and it causes that ceruloplasmin enzyme. It causes the copper inside that enzyme to sort of have diarrhea and bleed out. So he is not a fan of taking exogenous vitamin D. And I tend to agree because not only is he very well studied, but he's extremely smart and he wakes up. Morley was saying he wakes up every morning and for 2 or 3 hours just reads studies and journals, and papers and articles about all this mineral stuff. And so those are the kind of people I tend to agree with because, they're putting in the work. As Dr. Cruz says, their skin is in the game. So I kind of tend to agree. Vitamin D is not something I take anymore because of that. I try to do my best in the summertime to get enough sun, make sure I'm getting enough retinol and vitamin A and cholesterol in my skin to appropriate that vitamin D that should be created there via biophotons from the sun. So that's kind of where I focus on. Have you ever used solfeggio frequencies or binaural frequency for music, sleep, and healing? Yeah, that would have been a good question to ask him. I have not, but there's a lot of things you could do to program your mind while you sleep, and we could talk about that on another episode. I think that would be a cool thing to talk about, to sort of to look into. Rob Matt says, wow, good memory. Yeah, Rob Matt, I remember you doing some things because that was back in my raw vegan days. I was doing a lot of basically 100% raw vegan from 2003 to 2010. And I remember Anthony Anderson doing a lot of work with you, and I think you were building a garden of some kind. I forget what exactly you were doing, but yeah, I remember that. So yeah, good memory. You got Marcus Rothkranz and Dan the Man both raw? Really? Wow. I thought Marcus has been raw forever. Dan, are you talking about the Life Regenerator? I love the show and the guests. Which interview was hours longer? I know, right? Yeah, it's kind of challenging because we could go on for hours upon hours, but then a lot of people just won't listen to that much content, So I kind of, for me, I prefer Big Fat Mama long form content because it allows people to sort of have a platform to be able to talk about big ideas. And in our culture, it's like a soundbite driven culture, as everyone knows. It's like, 10, 15-second Instagram story videos, sound bites on news clips, and people aren't really given an effective platform to be able to share their ideas. And on top of that, unfortunately, people's attention spans these days because of technology is less and less and less. And so for me, I feel like it's important to have long form content. I think all forms of content are good. And I agree with you. The show could have gone a lot longer. And maybe next time we'll do a longer show. And I think we need to, it's sort of like when, say, a physicist is giving a speech somewhere, you know, does he dumb down his topic so that the people can understand it? Or does he speak from a level of authority about the intrinsic nature of what he's talking about and force people's intellects to rise? And I think that's kind of, that sort of idea is what I'm trying to do with the show, is bring everyone up and maybe allow for people to have a longer attention span. So, yeah, so that way, you know, people don't get forced into like this short attention stamps, you know, kind of stuff. So Raw Matt says, let me know if you want to talk to any of these guys. I talk with Matt Blackburn, Marcus Rothkranz, David Jubb, all of these guys still. No way. Yeah, we're friends with Matt Blackburn. He's been on the show a few times, and he's going to be on again here pretty soon when he comes back to town. Marcus has been on the show as well. We've never had really David Jubb on the show. You know, I'm not sure what he's up to these days, but he's an interesting guy for sure. Marcus went vegan for a long time. I met him in 2005 and got him raw then in Las Vegas. I've been raw vegan now coming 19 years. Wow. So you've been raw vegan for 19 years. That's amazing. Mark says, hi, Justin, Mark Holland. Awesome. Good to have you guys here. Where are you guys located, all of you? I'm curious. By the way, your show rocks. Glad I found it. Yeah, thanks, Matt. I appreciate that. We do our best to offer as much content as we can. So what we're doing now, for those of you that are just sort of finding out about our work now, is that we're putting all of our old archive content on, not Instagram, on iTunes and Stitcher and those types of places. So if you subscribe to our show, you'll get a show a day, basically, 5, 6, 7 days a week. And we do 2 new shows per week. So that way, like shows that we did in 2012 and shows that we did in, 2013, shows that no one has ever heard of, we're breathing new life into those shows and sharing them. So every single day we're releasing new shows on iTunes. So if you haven't subscribed on iTunes or Stitcher, make sure to do that. So that way you can check out some of our past shows as well. Sadly, David Jubb is having problems with his ex and child. His kid broke his leg and Jubb fixed it with chopsticks, and insurance took his kid away and deported him. Yeah, I remember that. That was a long time ago. I think that was like a good 6, 7, 8 years ago, because I remember he was having some real issues with CPS taking his kid from, I think he was living in New York at the time. Yeah, Jubb's a wild guy for sure. And yeah, he definitely has his views about things. He would not agree with the colostrum. He's more raw vegan, but that's cool. We're all allowed to have our opinions, right? I think the important thing is to make sure that we're always learning new things, from personal development, from spirituality, from physics, from history. It's really important to make sure that we're constantly learning new things, even about health and biohacks, all kinds of cool stuff out there. And I think that it's really important to make sure that we do that, always learn and grow. So I think that's the point of our show, is to do that. So yeah, let me see. Anything else you guys want to talk about? I think I'm going to head out and go grab some lunch. If you guys want to check out our upcoming shows, looks like on Monday we have Dr. Jacob Lieberman. We're going to talk with him about light, color, and consciousness. That's interesting. Callie Lyons. So a lot of these people I don't even remember, because I'll listen to a show with them, or I'm constantly listening to podcasts and YouTube videos and this is where all of our guests comes from. And so we put them in a big giant list, and we have someone reach out to these people. And sometimes this may have been someone like Jacob Lieberman. I probably listened to something of his like a year ago. So I'll have to revisit his information. If you made it on the list, then you're someone who's impacted me. So that's pretty cool. Callie Lyons, that'll be an interesting show about fluoridated chemicals. So that's going to be interesting too. Dr. Schrader, Michelle Lamassa Schrader, on recall healing. So that to me is really a cornerstone in health, is recall healing. That to me is really fascinating, because a lot of people focus on the physical, like we talked about in today's show, but in my opinion, real health and overcoming health challenges, it comes from trauma, comes from spiritual, emotional, and our connection to the universe, and to God, and all this kind of stuff. And I think that's where that is the invisible process that drives physical processes in our body. So like, for example, if you lower your cholesterol numbers or you lower your blood pressure, these are sort of artificial numbers that was determined by God knows who, and it tried to apply to a standard of care to all people everywhere. And so there's an invisible process that's driving blood pressure high. Sure, there's physical things as well, obviously, like high blood pressure, lack of copper, heavy metals, specifically cadmium, is going to drive high blood pressure or going to cause your blood pressure to rise. Chemicals, things like that. You know, you can take physical things for high blood pressure too. Like the big ones are like European mistletoe. A lot of these things will lower hawthorn blood pressure. Cleansing and detoxing heavy metals, cadmium specifically. But, you know, there's something deeper going on with why your blood pressure is higher, and there's an invisible process that's causing your body to react like that. And we think, oh, there's something wrong with our body because our blood pressure is high, but really it's reacting to a stress. And that stress is connected to our higher nature, our who we are really at our core. And perhaps we're dealing with some emotional, spiritual trauma that's not even ours. Like it's passed down from generation to generation. Like in the Bible, it talks about how God will revisit the sins of this culture for 7 generations. And so I don't know if that's true, if God punishes people for multiple generational things, but there's definitely things that get passed down energetically as long with physically. So if you're looking to heal something, that would be the first place I would start, and then start working on those areas of health that are like biophysics, light, water, magnetism, photons, electrons, the electrical side of the body, voltage. These are like sort of the aspects that are spiritual but physical, and they dance between the two. And then you can get into mitochondria and work yourself down from there into bigger and bigger molecules of the body, and ATP production. But don't focus just on the physical, and don't focus just on the spiritual, emotional. Because like Dr. Swartwout was saying, like he's got a lot of people that are in his practice that are focusing just on the spiritual, and they're not, looking at the physical aspects of health. Then you have people that just focus on the physical side, and they don't focus on the spiritual side either. So there's this holistic way of bringing all of these elements in and working with them to create an environment where our body can heal itself. And, make no mistake, the items in our store, they don't heal anything. They don't cure anything. Pharmaceuticals don't cure anything. Drugs and medications, they don't cure anything. They artificially manipulate arbitrary numbers that guys in white lab coats came up with that say this is the range where you need to be in order to be healthy. They manipulate those numbers artificially. Meanwhile, the disease process is still happening in the background. We just don't see it, and we don't notice it, and we look at the numbers, and the numbers look good. So this is why it's really important to have a holistic view about how to heal yourself, because it's multi-generational, it's multi-layered, multifaceted, and healing can happen in an instant. And so it's really important to remember that. So this is why we do what we do, to give people options. You're not going to hear stuff like this on mainstream news. I encourage all of you guys to listen to podcasts, to share information from podcasts, and make sure to educate yourself in that way, because it's really, really important to do that. And that way, there's a twofold benefit there. When you're listening and educating yourself on a podcast, you're becoming a better version of yourself, for one, right? But also, that energy and attention is not on the mainstream news. And that medium, in my opinion, is satanic. It's extremely dangerous to listen to the mainstream news. It's not a place where you want to fill your mind with information from. So you'd be better off just staring at the wall, than watching the mainstream news or listening to mainstream radio. Listen to shows like this. There's tons of great podcasts out there, and I encourage you to listen to more of them, because not just our show, but other people as well, because I think we're really trying to help people come into a new way of being and understanding there are options for healing. And it's really important for me to give this information so that people have other options. And it's so important to know that because that eliminates fear. Knowledge and information makes fear disappear. And when you're no longer afraid, then when a doctor tells you something and tries to get you through fear to take action on taking a certain product or a pharmaceutical, because you have other knowledge and other information, you're not fearful and you cannot be manipulated. One of the best ways to manipulate people is through fear. And salespeople know this, and so doctors know this. And so if you can quote studies and make people feel fearful and make them feel like they aren't enough and make them feel like they need you in order to heal, then you're going to cause a disempowered person that's fearful and will basically be putty in your hands, because those people can tell you to do anything and you'll do it because you're fearful. So what drives fear away is knowledge and information. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. It was a lot of fun talking with Dr. Glen. Go visit his website, tryunity.net. We'll put all the links and all that good stuff over at extremehealthradio.com/645. I hope you guys enjoyed that. And Teresa says, thank you. Glad to catch you live. Appreciate your content. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Matt says, glad I found your channel. New fan. Subscribe. See you around. Cool. Thanks, guys, for subscribing. I appreciate that. You'll stay up to date on all of our good stuff, our content. Let's see. Cool. I guess I mean to ask if you eat seasonally in the winter. I live in the desert. So cool. Yeah, Rob, Matt, good to have you here, man. So I'm glad. I'm super glad. And yeah, it's good to see your name because I remember you from years back. So it's good to see you. All right, guys, thanks so much. Please share this with your friends. And if you're watching or listening on your phone or whatever, tag us on Instagram and share it with your friends and let people know that we exist. And I would really appreciate that. And anytime you also want to leave a review, that helps us tremendously. People don't realize how much reviews help, but the more reviews a show has, the more that show is recommended to new listeners. So it's really cool and really key if you can share our shows and leave reviews and things like that. So super important. So we appreciate that a lot. If you're ever in the market for any products, just visit biocharge.me and you can see some of our recommended products there and all kinds of good stuff on there. biocharge.me. And if you want to take your health further, join the Extreme Health Academy. And when you do, tag me in the forums so that I know that you joined, because all of our content is eventually going to end up over there. So we're in the process of moving over to a different system, like I mentioned before, library, but also moving all of our best of content into the Academy, as well as Dr. Bergman as well, because we don't know how long we'll have these platforms. So when you join the Academy, there's a coupon code EHR14. That will give you a 2-week trial for free. So if you're watching on YouTube, there's a link in the description. Come join us and say hello in the forums. And I'd love to get to know you and help you out as much as I possibly can. So love you guys all. I hope you have a great weekend. I hope you have a great week next week. And I will see you on Monday at 10:45 Pacific. And love you all. All right. Thanks, guys. See ya.
No material on this blog is intended to suggest that you should not seek professional medical care. Always work with qualified medical professionals, even if you educate yourself in the field of live food, nutrition, and alternative medicine. I'm not a doctor, nor am I offering readers medical advice of any kind. None of the information offered here should be interpreted as a diagnosis of any disease, nor an attempt to treat or prevent any disease or condition. While information in this blog is discussed in the context of numerous conditions, it can be dangerous to take action based on any information in this blog or to start any health program without first consulting a health professional. The content found here is for informational purposes only and is in no way intended as medical advice, as a substitute for medical counseling, or as a treatment/cure for any disease or health condition, and nor should it be continued as such. Always work with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your diet, prescription drug use, lifestyle, or exercise activities. This information is provided as is, and the reader/viewer assumes all risks from the use, non-use, or misuse